Hey, creative souls, word witches, writers, thanks for tuning in. I'm really happy that you're here. In this video, I will be talking about what to do after you finish the first draft of your novel. Before I get to that, if you don't know me, my name is Johnny. I'm a published fiction writer and a retired adjunct writing professor. For 2 decades, I helped college students get their words on the page. Now I teach fiction writing and screenwriting to adults in custody, and I focus on my own writing practice. I believe I'm on this earth to heal the world through stories, whether it's the ones I write and tell or the ones that I help you write and tell. I call myself a word witch, and I would love to have your likes, shares, and subscribes because I'm fairly new here on YouTube, and it's my sincere intention to grow this channel and help as many people as possible to develop and nurture and maintain healthy writing practices so that we can all get our words on the page and out into the world where they can make a difference. Because as I always say, stories can heal the world, so let's do it together. Before I get to the content of this video, I want to mention that as of July 1st, the price on my Alchemy of Writing membership group is going up. It's currently $18 a month if you meet online once a week with us. It's $28 a month if you meet 2 times a week. We meet Wednesday evenings, 6 to 7 p.m. Pacific time, and Saturday mornings, 9 to 10 a.m. Pacific time. So you have your choice. You can do 1 or 2. As of July 1st, the price is going up from $18 and $28 to $28 and $38. And so what else do you get with that? Well, we have a live Q&A that I do the last Thursday of every month, unless I have something else going on like I did this month. In July, I will also be adding a new feature, which is a community space for us to get together and for you all to connect and share your work if you want to. There's no pressure for that. But what I'm really striving to do is to create this community of people who really embrace the power of story to heal. And I'm really focused on creating a movement of sorts. I've been kind of quiet in launching this, and so the group is small now. If you get in on the ground floor as a founding member, you get to maintain the 18 or 28, whichever you choose, per month for the life of your membership. Another thing that will be coming in July is my Alchemy of Writing course, and it goes more in depth about how to create and maintain an enduring writing practice. And it will be free to everyone who is in the membership group. So those are 2 new things that are coming in July. There will be more down the road, and anything new that comes along in the membership group you will get at whatever price you start with. So let's get on now to the content of this video, which is, as I said in the beginning, what to do when you finished the first draft of your novel. So this idea to do this video came to me because I was talking to another writer recently about this whole kind of the psychology that goes along with writing the first draft of a novel and kind of the feelings that come after it and where to go next. So let's get into this more in depth. So I think it's not uncommon for someone to feel uncertainty and confusion when they finish the first draft of a novel because, you know, our brain tells us, oh, it's finished, but yet we know that it's not, right? We need to do a revision, we need to do a rewrite, and that can feel pretty daunting. Before we get into this more, I want to say first, if you are working on the first draft of a novel or if you've recently finished one, the very first thing you should do is celebrate. If you follow me for a bit, you know that I'm really big on celebrating our accomplishments, even if they may seem small to us. And not that finishing the first draft of a novel is a small thing, it's a huge thing. So I think it's really important to take a moment and really acknowledge what a feat you have accomplished. To take something from the idea stage and conceptualize it and create a character and their story world, that is huge. It's a very big thing. So I really hope you will celebrate that in whatever way you do that when you celebrate yourself. And if you don't celebrate yourself and your accomplishments, big and small, please start doing it. It's really changed things for me in the way I view life and my writing. It just helps me keep moving forward by giving myself those little pats on the back or big ones, because if we don't do it for ourselves, who else is? Seriously. With our writing, we might have people around us who support us, but if they are not writers, they don't truly understand that feeling of getting a first draft finished. They don't understand the obstacles that we run into. They don't understand this feeling that we have afterwards, which is, again, a reason why I created Alchemy of Writing, because I think even those of us who are uber sensitive, neurodivergent, empathic, who really need our solitude, we still need community. And so my goal is to create this quiet community that will be supportive. If you don't have that in your life, it can be very discombobulating to finish something as big as a first draft of a novel. So I have some ideas about how to think about this time and what to do when you're in that part of the process. Because finishing one step is not finishing the whole thing. It can really create this kind of ebb and flow of emotions and energy. It can feel like a roller coaster at times. It's very up and down. This whole process of conceiving of a novel, getting it out into the world onto bookshelves. I truly do believe that what writers do is extraordinary. To take an idea and turn it into many, many words on a page, many, many pages that make up a novel, that then become a product of sorts that people can consume, enjoy, and be changed by. It really is phenomenal. And I hope you can embrace this idea of writing as a magical endeavor. And, as I've said before, not this fluffy, glittery kind of magic, but this rough magic, this alchemical process that writers go through to create stories that will change people. To be able, first of all, to think in ways that allow these stories to kind of bubble up inside so that they can come to the surface. And then to have the courage and the will to learn to write and keep improving, and then commit to a process that is not easy, that's oftentimes confusing and perplexing, and even sometimes emotionally taxing, all to create this ripple effect out into the world. That's truly extraordinary. So what do you do then after you've accomplished this extraordinary act, getting a first draft written? After you've celebrated, given it some time, and I'll talk in a bit about maybe how much time, then you move on to another extraordinary act. You revise and you rewrite that first draft. And I know for many people, the thought of this feels daunting, confusing, and I think there's this natural impulse to resist. It's very easy to feel like, well, I'm done. I wrote a first draft, and it can feel inside us, we can experience this as complete, finished. It's easy to imagine or to even do this. Let it sit in a filing cabinet. If you're like me and you need to print out your manuscript so that you can read it and make sense of it. Or just let it sit and add to the digital backlog of files on your laptop. That's also me. In some ways, it's safer to adopt this, oh, that wasn't really what I intended, because as Virginia Woolf once said, I assure you all of my novels were first rate before they were written. I haven't met any writer who doesn't have this feeling after a first draft. It's also easy to take a it is what it is mentality, like, okay, that's the best I could do, I'm going to move on to something else. But as Hemingway once said, the only kind of writing is rewriting. This is when the real writing happens. So I see the first draft of anything as a brain dump of sorts. And this is not to minimize this extraordinary act I just talked about of completing a first draft of a novel manuscript. But it's much like that hose metaphor I like to use. When we think of it, a hose sitting coiled up all winter long, gathering bugs and dirt and webs inside it. And then in the spring, when we turn on the hose for the first time, all that gets flushed out. That's, to me, what a first draft is. It's getting outside ourselves all these thoughts we have around this character and their story. Because as I've talked about also, I use lots of metaphors. The bees in a jar. If we leave those bees kept up in a jar, they're just going to bang around inside against the walls of the jar against each other and become frenzied, and nothing happens. So that's why we really need to get all that outside ourselves and really embrace the idea that a draft is a draft, and then there's the rewrite. So once you've celebrated and either printed or filed away your novel on your laptop, I think it's really important to let it sit for a while. And this varies, I think, at least 1 month of not thinking about it at all. And it may be longer for you. I'll tell you how long it took me to write my novel, Miranda's Garden, which is still not in print because I'm looking for an agent, but I'll tell you about that story in just a bit. The thing is, though, we have to make sure we only let it sit for a while and not indefinitely. I think it's really valuable for us to let our brains sit and reset away from a certain project and let it think about other things for a while. Because if you've written the first draft of a novel, it becomes an obsession. And I think it's a healthy obsession, but it's good to give the brain a bit of a break and think about other things. And maybe this means for you not writing anything. Maybe it means working on another writing project for a while. Maybe it means taking a break and painting for a while, or seeking out some other kind of creative endeavor until you are ready to come back to the rewrite. The reason I think it's good to let things sit like this is because we can become very fixed in our ideas about things, because it takes a very maintained focus to get that draft written, right? And so we need to take our brains away from that mode of being, that mode of thinking. Because if we stay in it, it can really cloud our ability to see other ways of doing things, to see where changes are needed. And so that's why this break is really essential. We have to be able to have different perspectives and new ideas when we sit down for a rewrite. So in essence, we need to come back to it more objectively than we can in that moment when we first finish. And depending on you, your practices, your individual brain and how it works, you may need more than a month. And it's very easy to become wedded to what's on the page and not want to change it. And so that time does allow for that perspective. When you give a piece of writing and a character in their story a chance to just sit and be, when you return to it, the story, your writing, the character, they will show you the way into the second draft. It will show you holes in your character arcs, holes in your story arc, and it will show you better ways to accomplish your purpose for telling the story in the first place. So I've heard some people say that when they finished their first draft and then went back to it, it just didn't resonate with them anymore. And I understand that. Here's why. When we write something like a novel that is generally spread out over a period of time, because we are ever evolving humans, we change. And it's a very weird sensation to write a novel and then come back to it and just realize that there isn't that resonance that you felt when you were writing the draft. But I think this is a good thing. This, first of all, says that you are evolving as a person, so you can bring newer, more informed information to the project, because we can show up with a different kind of awareness about ourselves, about our writing, about the world, and about our character and their story. But I think there's one big thing that absolutely is true for me, and I'll bet it's true for a lot of other people, so I want to offer this. I think there's one major thing that can inform us whether this first draft of this novel is something that we ought to return to and rewrite and rework it so we can get it out into the world, or whether it is best to just let it go and let it be what it is and move on. And that is your level of love for your protagonist. So if you have a completed version of your novel, the first draft, ask yourself, how much do I love this character? How much do I love my protagonist? And if you find that you are still in love with your protagonist, then my belief is you must press on. You must do the second draft. And this is not to put pressure on anyone ever for anything, because who can write when they're under pressure? Well, some of us can. Depends on what I'm working on, but pressure-filled deadline really gets my butt in gear sometimes. But for me, as a person who has created this YouTube channel to help people write, I don't ever want people to feel pressured in any way by anything I say, because my goal sincerely is to help, not harm, not restrict, not diminish. It's to build up and really help you believe, if you don't already, that your words matter and they need to be out in the world. For myself, I figure if my characters showed up for me and really gave me a reason to write, I owe it to them to finish their story, give them life and breath so that they can be realized on the page. So let me tell you about the trajectory of Miranda's Garden, my novel. I started it when my youngest was 2 years old, and I finished the 5th draft of it during the pandemic lockdown. That 2-year-old is now 34. So it took me a while to actually finish my novel. Now, do I think the sequels to Miranda's Garden will take me so long? No, they can't, because I'm getting up there and I don't have that kind of time. I also now have that muscle memory of what it is like to write a first draft, to write subsequent drafts, to get it in a condition that I feel good about so I can start submitting it to agents. It was my love for Miranda that kept me working on this novel. It was my love for her that wouldn't let me retire it. She stayed with me for all those years, even when I wasn't working on it, because I went through long stretches of time when I didn't even touch it, for a number of reasons that I might talk about in another video, or maybe not. I don't even know if that's important, but I was always thinking of her. And I think to truly tell her story, I needed to evolve more myself. Did I need 32 years or 30 years to evolve? I don't know if I needed that much time, because I'm easily sidetracked, and I know I got sidetracked often by other projects throughout those years. But I also recognized eventually that I was resisting finishing it so that I could submit it, because I didn't want to lose her, because I loved her that much. And I felt like finishing her story, finishing this novel, I was going to lose her. But then what occurred to me was that if I finished her story, if I got it in print and out into the world, she would live forever and I would always have her. And that's the thing that turned the corner for me. During this 5th version, the final version, I also realized that Miranda's Garden is the first in a series. So she's going to be around for a while. She and I have more things to do together. I would love to hear from you, from all of you, any of you who are willing. I would love to hear in the comments about where you are in your process with your novel or your short story. I would also love to know how you know when it's time to let it sit, to keep at it, or to let it go. And if you aren't sure, if you're ever not sure, go back and think about, am I still in love with this protagonist? And if you really feel the need to break up with them, because that's how I view it, because let's be honest, think about people who come into our lives. Some pass through to teach us a lesson, some pass through so we can teach them a lesson, some stick around a bit longer, and really find a place in our hearts, right? And I think the same is true for our characters. So really consider, where are you with your character in your current project that you're working on? And if you don't feel like you'd be sharing too much, tell us your protagonist's name and what you love about them. Sending you mad writing mojo. Happy writing.